the debate of the U.S. Senate Civil Rights Bill. That was their one and only meeting. No one knows what was said. They took that with them to their graves.
Welcome back, Truth Seeker. Tuesday, November 24th, 2020. In the headlines, Dave Chappelle says Netflix removed Chappelle's show from service at his request. So, a story about his power as a comedian. He's getting these record contracts from Netflix, and now he's dictating what they do with the content. And if you missed the live stream I did earlier today, I was talking about the death of David Dinkins at age 93 and how his term as mayor of New York City ended in 93, and now he's dead at 93, and the significance of him being the 106th mayor. And at the end of that live stream, somebody called in and asked if I'd heard about the Dave Chappelle news, and I hadn't yet. So that's how the news was broken to me. And I always start decodes in the same place. I always measure from the person's birthday to the date, and right away the first thing I noticed was it was Dave Chappelle's 93rd day of his age. And just in case you are new here, to make a point, 1 second. This book right here is the first book I wrote, and it's huge. And the 18th chapter of this book is about these certain numbers that are used again and again in rituals that have a lot to do with race. And one of the numbers described in that chapter is 93. One of the main numbers that I always focus on. And to make a point, to bring this story together, which comes on Dave Chappelle's 93rd day of his age, his power and influence with Netflix and the content that they're showing, from his 93rd day of his age to the death of David Dinkins a day before at age 93, the only black mayor of New York City, back to earlier this year. I'm going to show you how all this comes together. Earlier this year, when Dave Chappelle put out the 8:46 special in tribute to the George Floyd killing, where reportedly the officer was on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And like we pointed out, the first plane to hit the Twin Towers on 9/11 hit at 8:46. And they set the George Floyd pre-murder trial for September 11th, the 19-year anniversary. But we'll go back and talk about the release date of this special, which was June 11th, in light of it being about George Floyd, who was killed in Minneapolis, Minnesota on the 93rd Meridian West, and the significance again of this number in what they call Black History. So, today, Tuesday, November 24, 2020, Chappelle's show is no longer on Netflix, and Dave Chappelle is happy about it. The comedian on Tuesday opened up in a video posted to Instagram about the streaming service's move, which he says came at his request. In his video, Chappelle acknowledges that the contract he signed with Viacom CBS allows for his show to stream without additional payment to him, the creator, star, and executive producer. He takes issue with the approach. And then he, in quotes, they, Viacom CBS, didn't have to pay me because I signed the contract, Chappelle said. But is that right? I found out that these people were streaming my work, and they never had to ask me, or they never have to tell me. Perfectly legal because I signed the contract, but is that right? I didn't think so either. That's why I like working with Netflix. So he's saying Netflix heard his complaint and honored his request. And again, from his 47th birthday to this news story, November 24th, born August 24th to November 24th is a span of 93 days. And again, these numbers are so significant. They have a lot to do with Black history, but they also have a lot to do with time. If you're new here, if you write out the word time, T's the 20th letter, I's the 9th, M's the 13th, E's the 5th, if you just add up those letters, 20 plus 9 plus 13 plus 5, it's 47, time. And if you look up the tropics of the Earth that measure the solstices, the way the coordinates of the Earth are set, they're 47 degrees apart. So many rituals done with 47 in time. But to the occult, the planet that is associated with time is Saturn, and it's the only planet where if you spell it out and add up the letters, S the 19th letter, A the 1st, T the 20th, U the 21st, R the 18th, N the 14th, if you just add it up, it equals 93. And Saturn is the keeper of time to the occult. And occult means hidden knowledge, like the practice of coding numbers into words. And they tell us the sun is 93 million miles away. And you start to look into the history of the measurement of the sun, the calendar system we're on that's based on the sun, the language we're speaking. You see, it all comes from the church, the Catholic Church, that has a lot of occult knowledge recovered from the Crusades hidden in his vaults. And, they gave us the language. Son, son, son of God, sun in the sky. They tell us the sun's 93 million miles away. With the alphabetic order, if you write out God's son, if you write out Nazareth, if you write out crucifix, they're all 93. And that always stood out to me because in light of the number 93 and learning about it in Gematria always stood out to me in light of the deaths of Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, because I've been talking about this like a broken record since 2014. When I first began in 2014, the only two ciphers I knew were the alphabetic order and the alphabetic order with the rules of numerology. And I noticed that Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, both of their names equaled 93. And they both died at age 39. And there's 39 books in the Old Testament. And the 930th chapter of the Bible is where the Christian section begins, about God's Son, Jesus, who, dies, the sacrifice, the crucifix. And in the Bible, they say Jesus is crucified between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m., 9-3. And Saturn, which has the 93 encoded in it, is connected to death and judgment. And you can look up the article. It's from about 2012. Around then, science traces the date of Jesus' crucifixion to April 3rd, 33 A.D. April 3rd is the 93rd day of the calendar in the system we're on, as given to us by the church. And anyway, 93, it's just this very significant number. Martin Luther King Jr. assumed his name Martin Luther, named after the leader of the Protestant Reformation, which has to do with the church, of course. And again, Martin Luther wrote the 95 Theses, and Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated on the 95th day of 1968. And the 95 Theses is what started the Protestant Reformation, which led to the creation of the Jesuits, who again were recognized by Rome on the day leaving 95 days left in the year. So, again, the parallels are there. The number patterns are there. And the other thing that always stood out to me once I learned this is I started to look more into Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, and I found out that they only met one time in history. March 26th, 64. It's the only time they ever met. Look it up. They only met one time in history, these two men. March 26, 64, which was a date with 93 numerology. And I've been talking about this, so I've done so many videos bringing up this point over the years, because it's just like, how could that be a coincidence? And neither of them were born with the names that they're known by, Malcolm X or Martin Luther King Jr. And, again, for both of them to die at age 39 and to both be assassinated on dates with 44 connections, the number connected to shooting and kill and execution, and years later the 44th president elected 44 years after the Civil Rights Act, Obama, who just put out his book, A Promised Land, on the day leaving 44 days left in the year. But the day that they met, March 26th, that day can also be written 26/3, like 263, the 56th prime, and that's the big number with the Jesuits. And Society of Jesus is 56, and Black Lives Matter is 56, and Dave Chappelle's 56. We talked about this earlier this year when he was used in the George Floyd 846 ritual, and why he might have been chosen. Don't forget that they painted Black Lives Matter on 16th Street on June 5th, a date that can be written 5/6, as it is in the majority of the world, like 56. Can also be written 6/5, like how we write in the U.S., and George Floyd equals 65, the reflection of 56. But, yeah, the only time Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X ever met, 93 date, and a date with a 56 connection. And again, who's leading the agenda? Who's pulling the puppet strings? Who's controlling the media, the government, the stories, the sports, putting their stamp on it all throughout history? The Jesuits, the Society of Jesus, the Divide and Conquer gang. And all these people in the media are used for the divide and conquer agenda because they always know different groups will be impacted differently by the words of these people. If you're new here, Gematria, it's based on 4 ciphers. There's 4 base ciphers you really want to know: the alphabetic order with the rules of numerology, the reverse alphabetic order, and the reverse alphabetic order with the rules of numerology. And notice Chappelle is 78 and 42, as is the word Jesuit, 7842. Chappelle is 78 and 165 as well. Here, I'll just do it up here so you can see. So Jesuit is 78 and 42. Notice when I write out Scottish Rite, it is 78 and 165. And Chappelle is 78 and 165. And remember, think about the nation's capital. The Jesuits have been there longer than the Feds. The Scottish Rite has been there since 1801. And modern Freemasonry, which the Scottish Rite came out of, was established in the Jesuit stronghold, the City of London. And again, when you hear the City of London, realize that doesn't mean all of London, England. It means London's divided into 33 neighborhood areas, which is a fact. You can look it up. And it's right in the center. It's called the City of London. It's where the central bank is. It's been an independent city-state, separate from London, like how Washington, D.C. is an independent city-state, separate from the rest of the United States, ever since 1871, after the Civil War. But, which, again, was an act of the Jesuits, because they're all about divide and conquer, and every time they divide further, they take more and more. But his name, interesting gematria, and then the 39, Masonry's 39 in that same cipher. Masonry 39. Same with secrecy, 39, biblical number, Old Testament, 39 books in the Old Testament, unless you're talking about the Catholic religion. And in the Catholic Bible, there's 46 books in the Old Testament. Same with religions, 46. Been talking a lot about that number lately. But, so all these numbers are relevant, but regarding the 39, you might recall that was a big number with George Floyd's death. From the day Dave Chappelle put out his special on George Floyd's death to the day of this big accomplishment with Netflix, it's 167 days. And that's the 39th prime number. Remember, George is 39, Gemini is 39. Gemini is the twins in astrology. He was killed in the Twin Cities, supposedly on Memorial Day, and then there was a story out of New York that same day, Memorial Day. If you recall, on Memorial Day, the big news story all day actually wasn't George Floyd. George Floyd was supposedly killed Memorial Day, but the news about him broke the evening after May 26th with the video of his killing. On May 25th, you heard of a white woman in a park choking her dog named Amy Cooper. And notice how Amy has the 39? New York has the 39. Remember, New York's the land of 39. NY's 39. NYC's 39. Empire's 39. If you write out New York, comma, NY, it's 39 and 93, just like how the mayor died at 93. And the United Nations there is 39 floors tall. The date of establishment, or the day that New York joined the Union, was it July 26, 1788, date with 39 numerology. The first governor of New York was born July 26, 1739, George Clinton. George 39, Clinton 39, again, New York 39. There's a huge long list of 39s in New York. The World's Fair, every New York-related Super Bowl, either the score was 39, the date numerology was 39, or the Super Bowl was played on the 39th parallel. Every single New York. 4 by the Giants, 1 by the Jets. The Jets won 16-7, like 167, the 39th prime. Oh yeah, and they call the Giants the G-Men for another 39. And there's just even more. 39 in New York. Never ends. I think the first touchdown, what's the guy that's for the Giants now that stole the donuts when he was Golden Tate? Golden Tate's 39-yard touchdown, his first with New York earlier this year on primetime. And I think Golden Tate, now that I think about it, I think his name's 167, the 39th prime. Yep, it is. Golden Tate. 167, the 39th prime with a 39-yard touchdown. They couldn't have scripted it any better. But anyway, the point I'm making is Gemini, the Twin Cities, the Twin Towers, New York, Amy, George. Amy's choking her dog in an act of racism. In Central Park, George Floyd's getting choked to death by the park police, supposedly both on Memorial Day. You know what I mean? And then Dave Chappelle, who has the 39 in his surname, does the special and gets all this recognition for it. That was the last time we were talking about Dave Chappelle because he was the focus for doing that. And now getting that recognition again, not that much longer, for wow, look at his power. You know, he doesn't want you playing his Dave Chappelle show. Chappelle's show. And 167 days later. And so again, is it Dave Chappelle that's actually calling the shots here, or is this just all part of the show? And is this part of like Dave Chappelle being a bright spot in the mind's eye of the masses who follow the mainstream? Like, oh, here's a young black man who's been successful, who's he's commanding respect from the industry. Black Lives Matter, Finally, maybe we're turning a corner here after the whole George Floyd thing. Because isn't that kind of the narrative that they're trying to sell in a way? So again, just to keep people focused on these things. But 167 days, the 39th prime. And again, 93rd day of his age, right after the death of the New York City mayor at 93, who left office in 93. Minneapolis on the 93rd meridian. In Gematria, Minneapolis, Minnesota's 93. And oh yeah, Dave Chappelle's a comedian. And this is big news on the day, leaving 37 days left in the year. Comedian, 37. And while there are 4 base ciphers, like I always say, if you could just have one, it's that dark blue cipher, the alphabetic order with the rules of numerology. It's known as Pythagorean gematria as well. Comedian, 37 on the day, leaving 37 days left in the year. His power over Netflix. So, let's see. Oh, and it was about 4 years ago. It was in November of 2016. It was announced that he just signed the contract and was getting $20 million per special he put out for Netflix. And I honestly haven't seen any of those specials, but I imagine they're between an hour and a half long. So, man, $20 million for, obviously, to come up with a skit, it takes time to write it out and create it. But, man, $20 million per. And have any of them been that funny? I don't know. I have, what I've seen of the new Dave Chappelle, the guy who came back after he left for a while, he just, he doesn't seem to be funny anymore. So, I haven't been seeking out his work. But, yeah, the same old, same old. So, and speaking of same old, somebody asked if I can look at this story. Did you guys just see this from the other day? Boris Johnson put out the 56-page COVID-19 winter plan document, if you will. The 56-page plan for what the UK is going to do for the winter for COVID. And if you don't understand why I'm emphasizing 56, he's 56 years old right now. Again, it's just been the number of the year. Everything's been 56. Coronavirus is 56. Black Lives Matter is 56. Again, it's the Jesuits behind all this. Society of Jesus is 56. Anthony Fauci, the face of coronavirus, he's Jesuit educated. His name's 56. He said at Jesuit Georgetown on January 10th, 2017, that there'd be a surprise outbreak and pandemic under Trump. And I'm not doing that list any justice right now, but again, just like all year, one story after the next, 56, 56, 56. And we're talking about Dave Chappelle right now, just another 56. So here's one a lot of people can relate with. Unemployment, 56. Again, what we're living out this year is by design. Remember when you couldn't find any toilet paper? Because of the coronavirus, toilet paper is 56. Like mind control. Like Washington, D.C., which makes so much sense because Washington, D.C., where the government is, government means govern, control the mental mind, control the mind control. So all these things are 56. Remember the Jesuits, the Society of Jesus. They've been in that city longer than the feds have been there. Again, Washington, D.C. used to be called Rome on the Potomac, owned by Francis Pope, not to be confused with Pope Francis, again, the first Jesuit Pope, who just wrote his encyclical titled, here, just to make a point, the first Jesuit Pope, he just wrote this encyclical about what to do about coronavirus and climate change, and it's called Fratelli Tutti, which equals 56. Just like climate change. So, anyway, I wish Dave Chappelle, in his next special he would give a shout out to Gematria. Say, hey, there's some people doing some work in this world, showing some dark stuff that's going on. Yeah, just imagine if like 4 celebrities in a day tweeted about Gematria. Just imagine how much more of a flood of people there would be to research what that was. So few control so many in so many regards.